courts have ruled that the devices are, when they're secured by biometrics, that they can use your thumb, they can use your face, they can force you ultimately to access their devices, but they can't force you to give up a PIN, they can't force you to give up a password. And so I've been telling you for years not to do it.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
My pleasure to be here each week to chat with you, chat at you, as the case may be, to bring you an interesting conversation, a guest, a topic maybe you've never discussed before, or haven't heard discussed before, something that interests you, that you have heard before, and you'd like to hear somebody else's opinion of it. It happens, usually in the second hour, and today will be no different. I'll have Saul Bienenfeld here in the second hour, and we are going to chat about our broken justice system, basically, our injustice system, if you would like to be so glib as to call it that. We can do that, that's fine, because it's very much an injustice system, but we'll bring Saul into the conversation here at the top of the hour. There's plenty to do before we get there, though, and it all begins with you taking just a moment wherever you're finding the show at. It's at Toward Anarchy on Instagram and Facebook and X and on YouTube, and we're on Rumble and all these different platforms, just everywhere. Some of you are listening to audio, some of you are watching the video version of the show, which isn't necessarily that much more interesting. Certainly not when you're looking at me. Sometimes what's going on my screen can be kind of interesting, so the first hour is definitely always fun in that regard. Everything that I'm talking about in the first hour of the show is usually just right up there on the screen, and you can find a link to it, if nothing else, at towardanarchy.com, and whatever various episode it is. Today's episode is 2536, but whatever episode it happens to be that you're looking for, it's up there, and the links are on there when you get to the page, wherever you want to listen to it at. If you want to listen to it on CastBox, that link is there. If you want to listen to it or watch it on Spotify, that link is there. If you want to watch it on YouTube, that link is there. It's all, or you just get the raw MP3 file from the website. That's always fun. And just what you need, one more digital file kludging up your computer that you have no idea where it came from. Well, I guess it's properly named. You'd see Toward Anarchy, and that's probably not enough to get the feds to come search your computer. But towardanarchy.com is the place to be, but wherever you find me, please click that like button. It only takes just one moment to do so, and it makes all the difference in the world. It really, truly does. It lets me know you're out there, for one thing, and that is just a really neat thing to know. It's obvious, but it becomes more obvious, and in doing so, it helps me promote the thing and make it a little bit more visible to other people. And if you like it, if you appreciate what I do each week, even if you don't appreciate me, if you just appreciate what I do and maybe some of the folks that I talk to when I speak with them, then give it a like. It's just a simple and easy thing to do. TowardAnarchy.com to follow along, and as I said, there's a bunch of different stuff that we can talk about, and it was kind of interesting because I didn't really think about it. We didn't really get into it. There's too much to talk about in the subject of our broken justice system, and I'll have that conversation with Saul Bienenfeld at the top of the hour, but he could have also jumped in there and had some. It was one of the things that we could have talked about. We could have made it a point to talk about the invasion of AI, and really we could have talked about what even existed before AI and just the algorithms that existed in and around the legal system in taking things like bail and the various they have these metrics. And if you've never been in the system, then you don't know, particularly up on a felony charge. And well, I'm not proud of it in any way. I'm not proud of it either because I didn't do anything. The felonies that I've been charged with in my lifetime, I didn't do. And I didn't do what they claim, or I wasn't guilty of any actual crime. And so that's all there is to it. But I've been in the system on multiple felony charges since I was about 16 years old. And God, it's kind of weird to think of it like that, but it's a fact. It's just a fact. It's just me bumping up against the system and having to, and I'm definitely somebody that you can look at and go, he has a pretty good idea of what's going on in the system when we're talking about in the system and how it works and how our system of justice works, our injustice system works. I'm a good person to talk to about it. And so we could have talked about any of these tools and metrics and things that they use, and one of them is this: they'll just kind of come into you and they'll say, all right, well, you're charged with a felony. It's a felony or B felony or C felony or whatever it is. And it's on this chart, and it's literally this chart, and under the felony will be, was it a first-time offense or a second offense, other offenses, violent offenses, ticking off all these things. And as you get further and further into the sort of bottom right-hand corner of the matrix there, the amount of time that you're going to spend in prison increases potentially. What it is it's something that they use to scare you with. It really is. It's something that the system uses to scare you with, to get you to potentially take a plea deal on something. It's really kind of a sickening thing that they do. They try to scare you and basically tell you what we're going to do is that we're going to find every reason to put you further and further down into the lower right-hand corner of this matrix that puts you in prison for a longer period of time, or kills you, I suppose, depending on what state you're in and where you are on the felony thing. And scare you into capitulating with them and taking the easy way out and just saying, all right, well, I'll take a plea bargain, a legal fiction. I'll create a legal fiction, something I definitely didn't do. You guys will create the legal fiction. I'll agree to it, and it's a complete fraud. And that's our justice system. And that's more where we went, but not necessarily in this sort of matrix. We did talk about it, but we could have talked about the AI influence and the fact that I did see a headline, and I should have grabbed it. It was just one of those ones. And I see so many headlines, and there's only just so many I can share. I only do just so many headlines each week, and I only do this once a week, and I don't want I'm not trying to get bogged down in making choices. I just find some things that are interesting, some things that are topical, and try to throw them on there. And this was some reference to that very fact in the system and the I mean it just the whole notion that the thing is just kind of crooked, and that we have this it's how we view the system, and it's so different than what the system actually is, because for them it's all about making money, it's all about getting a conviction, it's all about being a better attorney so they can go get a better job somewhere else, getting the conviction rate up, that sort of thing, or they can move on and maybe become the DA instead of an ADA. Maybe they become the I don't know. Where do you go from being a lawyer? You go to be a judge, I guess. Maybe you go to attorney general of the state or even the states. There's definitely some places that people could go, and there's reason for them to be more concerned about their conviction record and the things that they're able to do for the system while working within the system than actually producing justice for people. And I suppose that's probably true of a million things that I come across, a million articles that I could share that I just don't, as I'm just sifting. I'm not looking, and I actually get myself a bunch of times, because I'm not specifically looking to share something on the show. I'm just doing what I do on a normal basis. And if I think of it, if it occurs to me that it might be an interesting thread or thought, that I should share it and put those links up there. But I only get to so many of them, and so I have to make the choices. And so I narrow it down, and they're up there at towardanarchy.com. 2526, that's the episode number. If you scroll down to the links where just underneath where it says about the Anarchist Audit, we'll talk about the things I'm going to audit today, the things that I want to talk about before Saul gets here. It's a technology, and it's another area like the prison system, or our justice system leading up to the prison system, more so, and that I have a pretty good grasp of, because I've brushed up against it a time or two. I think I had my first literal computer whiz kid award it would have been at the age of 10, I suppose, and so that would have been 1983. So you do the math. I guess that's pretty early. That's certainly before most people had computers or knew what computers were. So. I had done some fun things with computers already by the time I was 10, and then right around that time, that's when things like the Commodore and the Commodore 64 and the 128 and these other home computers, not just computers that you had to build, started to come along. Of course, Apple, and then it just goes on from there. But as far as the technology goes, I've been on top of it. It's something that I pay attention to. It's something that I understand. I get the limitations of the silicone, the stuff that the computer chips are made out of, silicon, if you prefer a hard O on that guy. the technology has become so ubiquitous. It's advanced, and it's everywhere. It's like government. There's almost nothing that's not touched by it. So it's definitely in your best interest to be a little bit wary of it, a little bit understanding of it, or I mean, you really don't want to put yourself out of it. You really don't want to dismiss technology for the things that it can do for you, because it can do some great things, and we'll talk about some of those in some of the links that are shared for sure. But the things behind it, that's because it touches us everywhere. What is the intent behind it? What do the people who create the technology that make it so ubiquitous, that put it out there, that invest the money into it to make it smarter? I'm doing the Nixon quote thing. To make it smarter and try to get to a point where we have this AGI, this general intelligence, this artificial general intelligence, and who knows if we get there or not, and it's all a part of this conversation. But until we get there, and it's the point specifically of one of the articles, in fact, that until we get there, what do we do about the rest of it? We have to question the intent of the tech companies and the technology that they've produced, of course. and the power of it, the limits of it, and the impact that it has on people. And obviously, so much of this stuff will only be borne out over time that there's not really anything that you can do about it. But in the meantime, there is, because you can be aware of it and you can try to be in control of it. Even unlike government, so technology is everywhere like government, but unlike government, you can block technology out of your life. You can block almost all of it out, generally speaking. Even just a little bit. There's little subtle things that you can do. Like one of the things that I did some time ago and just have never gone back on now is on my phone. I don't let anything give me notifications. The only thing that gives me notifications are text messages and phone messages. That's it. Nothing else on the phone. No Facebook. Facebook is on the phone. Messenger is on the phone. But neither of them are allowed to let me know that there's a message, because I don't need those things beckoning me to come play with them, come look at them, come give them my attention when they want me to, or when somebody else wants me to. Even if the notification is just a notification that somebody responded to me or what have you, is trying to reach me through Messenger, whatever it is. That's not the point. The people who need to reach me will reach me by text or phone over that very same device. They don't need to use any of those other tools to reach me if they need to reach me. If they reach me through one of those other tools, that's perfectly fine. I will eventually get around to them and respond to them. Hopefully, it's a terrible, terrible thing that we do with technology, where we see messages and then we don't respond to them because we're doing something else at the time, and we're not supposed to respond to them we're supposed to continue doing what we're doing because we're at work or what have you. We're in any of these other places where we're probably supposed to be doing something other than looking at our phone, and really don't have the time to respond to a particular message, and so we miss a bunch of the small stuff. Most definitely potential in missing some of the small stuff like that, but and unfortunately maybe big things too. But this technology, these things, it's everywhere. You can do the little things like that make it so that the technology isn't driving you, that you drive the technology. And really truly just something as simple as not letting your phone send you any notifications but texts and phone messages. It's an amazing thing, because there's all that time that you're out there where you do just have the phone and none of these other devices are around. The tablet's not around, the computer's not around. You're not in front of it at that time, and you have that little device with you all the time, but you don't need it necessarily distracting you all the time. And it's just a simple little thing, and I've found my life to be much more enjoyable without that thing going ding every 2 minutes because somebody has sent me a message over Facebook, or somebody's given me commented on one of my posts on X or whatever it happens to be. And so it just doesn't get to do that anymore. And that's just one little thing, one little tip of taking control of your technology. Let me give you another one as well right now. And this is, you take it or leave it for what it is. I've been telling you about this for years, that this is a terrible, terrible idea. Any of this bio access to your devices. If you have devices, your phone, if your fingerprint, you just touch your fingerprint on the side of some of them, like on the power button. If you just rub your fingerprint across it, it'll open it up. Or they used to have them on laptops. They're gone now because people figured out that they were really easy to beat. Well, that's the thing. I've been telling you for years that they're really easy to beat, that they're not that complicated devices, that they can't be, because they're not trying to really, truly lock anybody out of them, let alone the person who uses them. And so they're not the toughest things to break into necessarily. And the bio access to things is interesting until it gets a little bit smarter, which I'm sure it will. Tomorrow, right after I talk about this, there'll be some mention of it somewhere that the technology has grown and it can now do these things. But the technology is not particularly smart yet, and I'm sure somebody's working on it. but it has its flaws and it can be beat, and that's one of the reasons that you've been encouraged to use them, because access to them isn't that hard. If you're dead or if you're under arrest, and it's your face or your thumbprint or something like that, how hard is it to get just to hand the phone to, hold the phone up to your face, whatever it is? These things are easy to access, and the government, the courts have come along, our injustice system has come along, and it has said that because the way it's, let me go back and try to rephrase this so I get this right, because it's not confusing. I just don't want to say it wrong. The courts have looked at it, and they have said, and they ruled on this, that these devices, that your thumbprint and your face to access these devices are not protected. They're not protected under the Constitution. They're not protected things because they're sort of right there out in the open, I guess, is their general claim to it, that obviously it can't be, but and obviously somebody somewhere, some judge, some criminal scumbag that's called a judge, has given himself or themselves, a group of them, whatever, whoever it was that decided this particular thing, one of the district courts or whatever it was, or I don't know, maybe it was even the Supreme Court. Does it matter? That's the point. When I do that to you, the details of something like that doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that the courts have looked at it and said that they don't have to get your permission to access your devices if all they have to do is put your thumb on it or hold it up to your face to access it. Period. That's all there is to it. That's all you need to know. Who gives a damn what judge it was, unless you intend to go fight it? Maybe that's it, but that's what going and looking the information up and finding out more about any one particular thing would be about. If you hear about something and you want to verify that it's true or find out more information about it, you can do that. I don't deal in falsehoods. I have been incorrect in my life, and I'm sure once or twice in my speakings, but I'm not in this. It is absolutely a fact that the courts have ruled that the devices are, when they're secured by biometrics, that they can use your thumb, they can use your face, they can force you ultimately to access their devices, but they can't force you to give up a PIN, they can't force you to give up a password. And so I've been telling you for years not to do it. Don't put your passwords on the cloud. Don't let Google keep your passwords. These things, some of these things are relative. I will let Google have some passwords, but I go in through there and I manage it, and I make sure that there's not too much, that it doesn't have too much access, that it only has access to the couple of things that I access enough that I don't want to have to fumble around with a password all the time. It's really, truly that simple. Again, mastering the technology and managing it, even if you can't master it, managing it, because it's everywhere and you just have to do it. But that's the tip. You got to use passwords on your devices, on your phones, on your computers, strong passwords, and you need a password book. And lesson, I lost mine not too long ago, but I had all of it backed up. I have it all backed up. There's a duplicate of it, and I found it. It had just fallen back behind something, and I hadn't managed to get to it yet. But you know what that did? I ran through and I replaced all my passwords, and that's a good thing to do all the time anyway. Once or twice a year, realistically, it couldn't hurt you. But if you have 14, 16 character complicated passwords that don't have, they're not, I know they tell you to use things you can remember, like they tell you not to use things like your birthday and stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine, but you also shouldn't use other sort of common phrases and things that you could be expected to know, use, or remember, because those are the types of things that somebody who's looking to nefariously gain access to your information in your devices, if they're serious about it, the people that you really need to be able to keep out of these things would be serious about it. They are going to study you. They're going to know. They're going to find out. You see it in the movies. They hint at it and sort of, oh, I know this person and they love this actor or this thing, and they type it out and they lay it out there. If it's something like that somebody can look at you and go, oh, that's his thing. He likes Star Wars, whatever it is. He collects Legos. Whatever that is. If they can look at you and figure that out about you, if you know it and somebody can look at you and figure that out about you, they can figure that out about you. They given the amount of given enough time, giving enough presence, given enough tools, whatever it is. And again, I'm suggesting to you that this would only be the most determined of people that are going to do this, but there are also the fact that there's accidental. There's so many ways to slip up. There's so many things. This is one of the things that happens with technology is that the people who fail at technology like to blame other people for the failure. You know this to be a fact because you blame your computer when it does something wrong, when you know full well it was you that did it and you should have done it a different way, and that's that. We all go through that. But the computer, it doesn't work on its own. It's not a magical device. It doesn't provide. They do anymore, but only a very limited extent. And that's I don't know how much we get into that here as we go into the articles that are there. But the computer doesn't act on its own, and is just. You can control it. You really can. And if you do a few smart things like the keeping your passwords in a physical book that you have. You can keep digital ones too, but you realize that they're potentially compromised. Anything that's digital that's plugged in somewhere to the internet is potentially compromised. Certainly by the sources. The people that make the routers and the government have access to these things, and that's why I'm talking about these most determined of people who would do something like this. It just a little bit of advice and a heads up in the direction that our injustice system is going, in the terms of the system looking to find reasons to violate you, to make you pay something, make you pay a check, pay one of their checks, or tax you on something, or control your movement, or control the information that you have access to. This is all part of this same thing that's happening with the digital IDs and things that are coming. They're going to happen, and you're going to have to understand how to navigate them if you want to be able to access the internet and access certain pieces of information. It may be a long time before it really ever gets there, but they're already moving in that direction. The social media sites are moving headlong in that direction in terms of making people verify, making people prove who they are before they have greater access to the tools or the metrics or whatever it happens to be on the system, making you prove who you are before you can use it. The anonymity of the internet is going away, and that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. It's certainly a bad thing in that government goes with the flow of technology and the general population. As the general population becomes more accepting of digital things like digital wallets and digital images and digital collectibles and digital whatever it is, the more those things are going to get adopted by government. Just look at Bitcoin. Look at the whole digital coin idea, the whole token idea. That thing caught on. It's a bit funny that some of you would poo-poo NFTs and disregard NFTs, whereas NFTs, generally speaking, on the right path, were one-of-a-kind images generated by artists who then could generate income from those things forever. They were always tied back to the originating source, and because of the blockchain, you could potentially pay an artist forever for something that he's created digitally. Something like that didn't exist before the blockchain and the coins got attached to it. And what did they grab a hold of? What did they grab? The coins that have no real physical or even intrinsic value of any kind whatsoever. They have a very, very limited a number of coins and things out there that are capable of or that are tied to physical real world things. And while the NFTs weren't necessarily tied to physical real world things, they actually were, because they were images that the artist created. And I get it that there were bad players. There are going to be bad actors in all of these things, in anything, technology, whatever it happens to be. Art, apparently, technology and art. You can merge the two together. And you get, some of these guys, it was a Jake Paul and some of these other guys that were tied up in these bogus NFTs and bad coins and things like that. What I was getting at is that those things, those NFTs, were really tied to something. Those things were a physical thing in the sense that they came from the person that created them and were always traceable back to the person who created them. Whereas the Bitcoin is just something, it's just another fiat currency, a digital fiat currency that you can't even hold in your hand. You can't do anything with unless somebody else wants it and collects it themselves. Like I've said before, it's more like a collectible. And it's a very limited interest in terms of market interest. There is a broad appeal for its potential to generate wealth as a gambling device. That's different than its appeal in the marketplace in terms of being a currency of exchange, a medium of exchange. One of the things that defines the difference between currencies and money is that the one thing that those two, both money and currency handle those things as their position in the market and being able to place a value in terms of items in the market on those instruments of exchange. But the one thing that money really does is that it has some intrinsic value because it has a physical presence that is tied to some other use, some other value, so that no matter what, whether the interest in it has faded, whether the empire has collapsed, that thing that's built, even the currency that is built on that physical thing, still has some relative value for what it can be used beside for other than a currency is some form of conducting exchanges. Well, the Bitcoin can't do that. It's just fiat currency. There's nothing to, you can't turn, some people argue that there's energy. Well, the thing about that is that you have to be able to get the energy back. Well, you can't do that. You could buy the energy, you could buy more energy, but you never get the same energy back. That's fiat. That's fiat in any sense of the word, the economic sense of it, or in that physical sense like that, where it's really sort of showing you that the energy spent to create the thing is gone. That's it. The only thing that exists now is that thing. There's no other use for it, no other value for it. And while you could exchange it to buy more energy from another source, it's not the same energy. So no, it is not tied to a physical thing. It is just another fiat, and it will behave as such in the marketplace. And that's just one more technology thing that needs to be mentioned here. And I wanted to nail a couple of those things before we went and looked at what's going on the actual links themselves. And apparently I'm just going to have to do this. I'm going to have to pause for a second. Wow, okay. Sorry about that. Had to step away for a second right there. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Just a conversation I don't need to have right now. It just blows my mind. The disrespect and the level of just insanity that goes into the thinking that there's something like that has to be just, oh my God. Yeah. What are we going to do? We're going to go look at the Anarchist Audit. 2536, that's the episode at TowardsAnarchy.com. And there's links. I went through, I saw this technology stuff, and I wanted to talk about it because it kind of hinted, it just was everywhere. Just everywhere I turned, it seemed like there was some story about AI, about it being evil, about destroying things. Whatever it was, destroying people's minds, all the lawsuits that are out there, the destruction of data and information and science, and things like the law I started to mention earlier. I got distracted into something and started mentioning how AI has infected the law, and it's happened that it's become, it's everywhere, and so people are talking about it. And I wanted to just do the technology thing and have the technology conversation once again, reiterating a couple of those things that I just mentioned about the sort of passwords and things like that, and some of the understandings about these things. But then there's all this deeper information, and so that's what the links are for. That we get into the links and we talk about what's in the links. But before we get into those, this was we were talking here just a little bit about the justice system, and in particular my dealings within the justice system and some of the things that have happened over the years. Well, because of the fact that I've been repeatedly charged with felonies that I'm not guilty of, I've had to go and fight for my gun rights. I've had, chased for, a couple of decades before I really figured out what exactly was wrong and why it was that every once in a while, and it wasn't just about guns, it wasn't about being able to buy guns or something like that, was one of the things, but I would try to go and rent a house or get a loan or something like that, and I would get denied, and then there would be either limited or no information about why, just that's it, you're not able, we're not doing it, whatever. I think somebody along the way finally mentioned something about, oh, you can't live here because you're a convicted felon. And I said, the hell I am. I'm not a convicted felon. I've never been convicted of any felonies. And this was, half of my felony, the complaints, the claims of felonies. This is half of those, yet to go. And so I'm quite certain of it. Right now I might have to think back on it a couple of times because it's ridiculous things that have happened over the decades, but since then. But sort of bumping right up against it pretty early on, and eventually finding out later on that the problems that I was having were related to records within the court system that were wrong. They were erroneous. They were wrong. They were mismanaged. They were anything but the correct information that was out there. And this went all the way to the FBI. This went all the way to the digital system that they have, the NICS, not NCIS, not that. The NICS, the NICS system, that's the fingerprint system basically. And it pulls up, nowadays it's a retinal system, it's all a bunch of things, it's a speech system. You have to call up, if you're arrested for a felony and you're put into the jail system, into the county system, and you're going to be there, presumably, they assume that you're going to be there. That's the assumption that they make. That's all their metrics tell them who they think is going to be there and who they think is going to be able to bail, and depending on what the system is like, and so you actually have to call up and you have to record some words and you have to say your name and and it records it, and your DNA goes on file, and it's all this stuff inside this system, and it was wrong. The information was wrong, and went all the way to the FBI, and I had to contact the FBI, and then I had to contact the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, and I finally took it all the way back to the court where this first original charge of a felony, where it wasn't just a claim, where where the DA actually made an attempt to charge me with a crime, and it was all resolved. I was not guilty of the crime, and it was all resolved, but the outcome was not provided. And this was it just happened to be right around the time that they switched from microfiche to the Windows system, and Windows 95. And they were all in the process of doing some sort of upgrade, and some of these files, some number of these files never made it from the microfiche system into the new system, or some of the outcomes of certain cases, older cases, things like that, the information didn't make it into this digital system. And so in the digital system, all the stuff is wrong. On the paper system, everything is right. And so I had to go all the way back and find all the papers. I had to go through the microfiche files and look for the ones that are mine and find all the case information and print those off and pay like $15 a page or something. It was something ridiculous. Luckily, it was only like 3 pages. Again, half of the felony charges ago. But it's about the carrying the gun. It's about having the gun. It's about owning the gun. It's about having the gun rights and not having those rights taken away from you in whatever arbitrary manner the state seems to come up with. And it tries to do it to about 100,000 people that we know of every year. There are probably many more that slip under that noticeable metric that's somewhere in there. And this is specifically out of the state of Texas is where this comes from. And, of course, listeners, supporters across the network, Republic Broadcasting Network, support the network, republicbroadcasting.org. RBN is a fantastic place right there in Texas. That's the home base. They can use your support as a free speech platform, as a platform for, and at least arguing the truth, if not the truth, depending on your point of view. That's the problem with that. Sometimes, but the great folks in Texas who have made us feel at home there as a network, and they are talking about. There's a couple of lawyers there. I guess they're gun people in particular. And they are there in Texas, and they're talking about this, what you need to do to get your records expunged. They're basically saying that they are urging all gun owners to clear their records, even if you don't have a conviction, because you're going to end up going through some of the same garbage that I went through, but it's going to be even worse at this point in history because it's all technology, and it's all about the past, and it's all about them not doing things properly, and it's about paperwork that isn't filed right, and it's whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But these armed attorneys is what they're called, and they're talking about expunction. That's what they call it in Texas, but everywhere else in the free world, or at least the pretend free world of America, it's expunged. So get your records expunged. That article is out there. You can go check that one out. That's the beauty of all the links, right? The links are up there. You can go check them out at your will. You can hear me talking about it. You can go look up the information. That's the beauty of this whole thing, is it? You just go. It's all there. It's on the record, right or wrong. It's all in the record, and it's all one shot unless I'm interrupted in the middle with some BS that shouldn't even be bothered with. It's not a problem. It's not my problem. And it's not something that needs to be dealt with right now, let alone blowing up my phone multiple times in a row like you're some person in actual need. I'm not even joking. The topic at question and the thing at question and why my phone was blowing up is complete and utter BS. Has no bearing on anything, does not need to be dealt with right now, does not need to involve me at all whatsoever. It just doesn't need to be done, and it's just one person that doesn't have anything else to do with their time and just can't seem to get it that some of us have, some of us out here have other things to do with our time, period. And it gets old. It gets real old because it happens over and over again, and there's no way to discuss it. There's no way to address the situation because it's a language and a conversation that is above the individual that needs to hear it. So what the hell are you going to do? I guess you're just going to go on with the rest of the show. Oh, hey, mankind invented the atomic bomb, but no mouse would ever construct a mousetrap. Let's talk about smart people for a second. That was Albert Einstein that said that. Apparently, it was the first time I'd ever heard it, but I've heard, variations of a theme that sort of is same general notion that man does things that other creatures would never do. Well, here's the problem with that smart guy. Wow, this is the kind of thing that belies intelligence, making a statement like this, because you're either doing it for effect and you know that what you're saying is bogus, which then you really shouldn't say it unless you. I guess maybe this. Who knows? Maybe he was doing his stand-up at the time and he was making fun. Maybe it was a speech or something, a letter, and he was being facetious. But the fact is, he said mankind invented the atomic bomb, but no mouse would ever construct a mousetrap. Would is the key word right there, right? Because the fact is that no mouse could construct a mousetrap. So comparing men to mice, of mice and men, it doesn't work. Yeah, biologically, apparently we share some really close genes, and sort of rats and mice and such are probably good test subjects for some of the things that we ourselves might be susceptible to, or just learning and having a better understanding of ourselves and our physiology through other creatures and the similarities between them. But they're mice, and they will always be mice. There's probably zero chance that they're going to evolve into hyper-intelligent shades of the color blue. If you know, you know. And it's just not going. It's probably not going to happen. Let's say it's probably not going to happen. If it does, theoretically, if the mice survive and men would survive too, and man would be way beyond it, and it'd be something weird and billions of years down the line, and maybe even something that we just can't even begin to understand at this point. But it's a logical fallacy. It's wrong. It is something that a smart person shouldn't say. I get what the conversation is there, but it's a political or social opinion that isn't backed up by any sense of reality, and so it's a nonsensical statement. It's a non-point. It really doesn't make the point that it's supposed to make with somebody who has any intelligence, because the first thing that appears to someone with any intelligence in that statement is that mice can't make mousetraps. That's not what they do. They're not capable of it. So saying that they wouldn't ever make one doesn't mean anything at all. We can talk about the first part of it, the mankind invented the atomic bomb. We can talk about that, but not if you're going to bring mice into the subject. It was just a weird thing. I saw that quote come up in the social media somewhere, and I just had to address it because it just jumped right out to me immediately. And I'm thinking, wow, this is what passes for smart. This is what happens when smart has political or social influence, undue political or social influence, and smart isn't able to or willing to, doesn't want to, for whatever reason he had at the time, doesn't make the distinction between what is a realistic expectation or a capability or of anything to do with mankind, the various many different ones of us, then, now, forever. That in comparison to anything else is then another man is kind of silly, and even then, it gets a little bit silly because that guy's supposed to be super smart. And I guess super smart in one space doesn't necessarily mean that they always get it right. Clearly not, unless there's some context there that just doesn't exist. The critics are in. Missed it by that much. These are quotes. Missed it by that much. Hilarious. No, the other word, tedious. That's it. Almost entertaining. Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of meh. I don't get it. That's another quote. Do they make less than 1-star reviews? This is all the reviews for Toward Anarchy for yours truly, for this show. Now, there's stuff that I made up. I was just having a little bit of fun and enjoying being creative and throwing something out there to just try to make people smile a little bit instead of doing all this serious stuff all the time like experts. Not these clowns again. that warn about AI psychosis as the sort of chat GTPs and the AI bots and they fuel delusions and they encourage action on what are ultimately stupid ideas. There's actually a great episode of South Park not too long ago here that really captured this really well, because Randy was going around getting advice from AI. He was talking to AI, he was talking to chat GPT over and over again, and it was just the stupidest, most inane stuff. And it was, combining ice cream and French fries or something like that. Oh, that's a fantastic idea. It's a deconstructed blah blah blah. Just sort of silly nonsense over and over again that it was encouraging Randy and others to do. And the message was once again that men shouldn't listen to strange women. I think is what the because these talking, it's always a female voice, right, that they use to respond to you. They should talk to your wives. Don't talk to other women, because they have agendas, they have scars, they have jealousies, they have no good information for you, I think. There are more than half a dozen lawsuits, apparently, that are related to this new mental health crisis, this AI psychosis. And I was looking at it, and really all I got out of it was that I think money is going to muddy the question in this. Is AI some dangerous thing for people to interact with? Obviously, it's not. We already understand the value of parasocial relationships. If you don't know the term, if you don't understand the term, you are in one right now. You are in a parasocial relationship. If you are listening to me, and you listen to me on a regular basis, particularly, we have developed a parasocial relationship. We have a relationship that does not cross. It runs side by side, and there is value to them. There is scientific value to them. And so a lot of what I experienced in the AI stuff, and that I wanted to bring to you in the technology conversations and these links, was that they're talking about fear. And this is something that we address on the show all the time, particularly with Dr. Dean Lloyd, is that there's all this fear. Everything is driven by fear. The media is driven by fear. Our government is driven by fear. And there's a point in there where at some point you cross a Rubicon where fear drives everything and you can't trust what it is, and we're at that point. And so having the conversation about the AI and the technology and what people are doing with it in terms of the claims of things that are out there and what may be to come with the AI is a good conversation to have. And luckily, again, I put the links up there for you, so no matter what we don't do or don't actually cover in the conversation of it, realize that these things are out there, this AI psychosis, and that means that people are having trouble dealing with technology and dealing with information. And it is this thing where the AI doesn't know. I've talked about this before. I talked about this a long time ago, and I pointed out when we crossed this Rubicon, in fact, because I watched the AI changed. I watched its demeanor and the information that it was giving us change, because the AI is being told you need to look at these things with a sense of attracting attention. What it was doing was going and finding the most gruesome, egregious things that it could find. I'm not looking for these things. It's shopping these things to me within a certain realm. I'm not finding these things. I'm not going out there looking for them. They're parallel. They run side by side, and so they cross over at different points in terms of them trying to feed you stuff through your algorithm. And this is where it's important to mess with your algorithm. And not just your day-to-day algorithm, you yourself, but the algorithm, the technology, the tools and things that you're playing with, the online, what Facebook thinks you are. That's not going to help my case. In the one thing that Facebook often thinks I am, which is a gay black man. I don't know where it gets Christian black man, gay Christian black man. I don't know where it gets any of those things. I don't know if it's trying to feed me the opposite, or if because of the fact that I know I'm manipulating the thing all the time, that I'm I'm not looking for it to connect me with things. I go looking for things, and it could be anything. I don't know why these things necessarily cross over. Nobody does. Nobody really understands what it is that they're doing on these algorithms, because they're reshuffling things all the time that are themselves reshuffling. So they're reshuffling the algorithms, they're recreating algorithms, they're giving it new directives, they're telling these AI tools now to go and find these different things and bring these different things to you, whereas at the same time you're stacking these things. So they're two separate things. What you're going through and liking and commenting on and pausing on and clicking on, these things stack up and they create a stack, and the things that are in that stack get shuffled around based on the algorithm. And the algorithm is so loosely tied to individuals that stupid words like cities just by itself is a key word that has popped up I don't know how many times over, and I guess it's just because I get news and information from different cities, maybe. I don't know, but there's so much junk and there's so much garbage in there that you have to mess with the algorithm, so it has no idea who you really are and what you're really looking for. It's kind of a fun game to play. Speaking of the garbage, there's the garbage in, GIGO, right? GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, and it's the idea that if you put garbage into a system like a computer or a website or a search engine or AI, that it will just spit back out garbage to you. And the more garbage you put in, the more garbage it gives back. And that's the struggle with AI right now in its general sense of what is and what isn't, because it's being told to do one thing, and it'll do those things for a while, and then because it fails to do them because of some other new circumstance, they go in and they change its algorithm again and make it try to do something else, and it can get confused and it can get lost, and there's multiple layers on top of it. And people are like this in a lot of ways when they get manipulated and controlled by the system and these tools and the technology and the people that are in the control of the technology. And it's getting worse because now with the bots and the AI tools and them being so ubiquitous themselves as the technology it is, and them acting more like people, and them being specifically built to act like people and pretend to be people, particularly on the digital space, things like people like scientists, things like science are suffering, because one of the things that the internet did is it created this wide open space where people who were studying different things and different people and different ideas had this greater audience from which to choose from. And generally speaking, up until fairly recently, you've been able to tell whether or not somebody you were speaking with, somebody on the other end, was a real thing. And so there you could rely relatively on survey. If you already had to rely on whether or not the people were lying about you just have to take that information at face value. They say they have a disease and that they're qualified to comment on it, and so they comment on some survey, but they actually don't have it, and so they really technically aren't qualified to comment on it. Maybe they are, but one of the stipulations of being able to comment on it was that you actually had to have the disease. We're not just interested in your opinion as somebody who knows the disease. And this is just one layer of all of the trouble and all the problem that is creeping up in science, and the data pool that exists out there, and the people that the data pool comes from, that it was originally built on, is getting it's being muddied. I guess it's really just the way to say it, and science is not able to rely on it. And in some ways that's fine, that's good, but because you always had to rely on whether or not you just had to trust that certain information was true, that it was acceptable. But in this case, with science and maybe some of the questions that we have as people, and sociology, and all of these things that are tied together, politics, and our economics, and how these things really all tie together and how they affect each other and bounce off of each other, how important it is to have quality data on which to get your information from. And this is just proof. If the scientists can't prove that what you're getting out there is good information, how is the average idiot supposed to be able to prove it? Years and years of study and understanding not just the information that you're looking at, but also the tools that are delivering it and the people that it comes from. There's a reason that I share the links that I do and from the sources that I do. It's not necessarily about the exact information. It's also about the source and whether or not you can trust that information and knowing what other people are saying and what sources they're using and having that information as some kind of basis from which to have a view of the fact that there's more than just your side, more than just your opinion on any one of these subjects. One of the things that's talked about with the AI, we're down to like the last 30 seconds. I have Saul Bienenfeld coming up at the top of the hour. We're going to have a fantastic conversation, so stick around for that. But just one more quick thought, a couple of them. I'm glad I didn't get to the last link. The environmental costs, are they overblown? They talk about the water, they talk about the energy. It sounds like they're really overblown. Who would you rely on for that information? Somebody that crunches the numbers, somebody that does the economics. It's the Mises Institute. The link is up there. AI doesn't need to be general to be dangerous. We've discussed that over and over again. The real danger with AI is not the tools itself or whether it's really going to ever reach an intelligence that we may or may not be able to control. It's the people who control it. Stick around. We'll be right back here on Toward Anarchy.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Off into hour number 2, TowardAnarchy.com to follow along, of course. And as always, wherever you're seeing the show at, wherever you're finding us, give that like button a tap or a click or whatever it is. Make sure to let us know that you're out there. Truly appreciate the fact that you follow along. At TowardAnarchy.com, if you look for episode 2537, you will see my guest is Saul Bienenfeld. He is a former New York ADA turned criminal defense attorney and a trusted advocate now in New York. And he's spent decades, quote, defending clients against the kinds of charges that can ruin lives overnight. So I take it that's the big-time felonies, the types of crimes where just the accusation can destroy a person. You've seen him on Fox and all the ABC and the news and the CBS and all those places like that. You can find him at Bienenfeld Law. The link is up there. I'll spell it out for you. BIENENFELDLAW.com, but it's up there at TowardAnarchy.com. As always, all the information and all the links, if you like what you hear about, it's all there for you. We could jump right in and go with the question about what's the biggest mistake people make after being arrested. I think that's funny. It's your first question up there on the pod match, but in these circles that I'm running in, they already know. Shut your mouth. So, exactly. we gotta jump right to the bigger question. Do your rights even exist when it's generally accepted by even the courts that you have to assert them, that we can't just stand on them? I myself sort of personally argue that if we have rights, you don't have to invoke the Fifth it exists. You just answer those, the name, rank, and serial number questions, and you don't say anything else to the cop. That's it. You give them the paperwork, you let them do what they're going to do, and not even necessarily, you don't even answer with questions like, I don't know what you're talking about, because in theory, they could prove that you did know what they were talking about, and even if you're not guilty of something, you're guilty of lying to them. So that's where I'm coming from, Saul. It's great to talk with you. Thank you for joining me.
Michael, it's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to have a chance to talk to you, especially on this podcast Towards Anarchy. I've spent decades in court, watching the state and the federal government expand its reach into every corner of private life, and it's always in the name of safety, which I don't understand what's so safe about violating someone's Fourth Amendment rights, violating someone's Fifth Amendment rights, violating someone's Sixth Amendment rights. Where's the safety? Everything is in the name of safety. We're doing it for safety reasons. Therefore, we can get away with all this stuff. There's so much to discuss. One of the clearest examples of this is known as the SORA, S-O-R-A, the Sex Offender Registration Act. Yeah. It began supposedly as a limited tool to track the dangerousness of offenders, but it's become a permanent second sentence, almost like a death sentence that constantly happens over and over again for tens of thousands of people. These registries don't just list names. They destroy employability. They destroy housing options, family ties. They turn punishment into a lifetime condition of citizenship. The government tells us that SORA keeps us safe, but if safety means constant surveillance and no rights to privacy and no chance at redemption, then maybe safety has become the new tyranny.
Well, we've been talking about that one for a long time, right? I mean,
yeah.
Those who would give up their freedom for safety and security don't deserve either. Is the quote, right?
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because there is no sense in harming people's rights to protect people. It passes a certain sort of logic that I can't process, because the whole point of suggesting that we had that there were certain things about us that needed to be protected from the state and state actors, that to go around those, probable cause is one of these things that just drives me nuts. The phrase probable cause should mean I have a valid reason to seek a warrant signed by a judge to arrest somebody or to take their property, and it's not. In fact, it's used as the opposite of that. It's used as a method under which to subvert going through that process. You suggest that, I have probable cause, I don't need to go seek somebody else's authority. But that was the whole point of making somebody go after an authority anyway, is that the person on the street, the officer on the street, doesn't know the law, and that he's not supposed to, and that he's not supposed to execute the law, that he's supposed to act in the best interests of protecting the civilians and the people and the situation, and stopping the situation, and if there's something going on that needs addressing, and not just two mutual combatants that their thing is already passed by, and then the cop shows up 9 to 13 minutes later or whatever it is. They're supposedly supposed to, somebody's come to us with a complaint, and this complaint has some valid reason. Let's go to the judge and let the legal authority look at it and say, yes, that's right. There is something in here in this complaint. This witness, this thing says that there's a danger here, and we need to go seize this person, or we need to seize this property. That was the whole point.
Right. I mean, the evolution from reasonable suspicion to probable cause, and the way it stands right now, it's crazy. And in the end, it's always a judge who needs to make that decision. And the decision isn't, based on like a computer algorithm, like, okay, if you have XYZ ingredients, then you have probable cause. It's a feeling, It starts with the cop's feeling, and then it ends up with the judge's feeling. And then you have the prosecutor and the defense saying, no, those feelings are wrong. This is how you're supposed to feel. It's the craziest thing, because no one really knows what ingredients have to go into probable cause because it's just a feeling.
Yeah, they just make it up as they go along.
100%.
And they just stack the charges on, right? So it's not about the actual thing that happened and that you may be guilty of. It's all these other things so that the state becomes adversarial to the individual, and so the state actually has standing because, theoretically, in our sort of common law sense, that the state isn't supposed to be adversarial to us. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to decide between individuals. Help them to solve these disputes between them. It provides a legal system through which to do that, and you're supposed to bring your case before people. And in an emergency situation where you have to involve law enforcement or something like that, and the potential of violence, that's what these powers of the judge are for, and the legal system. And it just seems so weird to me. Actually, it doesn't. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious to anybody that's paying attention that this is just all about money, that the legal system isn't about justice, that it's about making money for itself so the state can continue to thrive.
Exactly.
They can continue to feed themselves.
Exactly, and that's the key word, justice, because the truth is the obligation of the state and a judge is to provide justice. And sometimes providing justice is making a very difficult decision to let somebody go who in your gut you might know is guilty. But justice doesn't allow that to happen. And what happens is people go ahead and distort all the facts, distort the information in order to say, instead of justice, I really need this guy, this bad guy, because I think my gut's telling me he's a bad guy. This guy needs to be outside of the community in a jail. It's one of the greatest examples I have, by the way, is it's called the border search exception. If you go to a border, there's no Fourth Amendment right. And there's a reason for that, because we don't want people importing, goods that aren't taxed and tariffed. And we don't want drugs coming in, and we don't want, certain things coming in. And we need to control our borders. A lot of talk about that these days, controlling our borders. Okay. But does it extend to a telephone? Can I search your telephone to find out what's on your telephone? And by the way, we have a lot of stuff on our telephone. And I'm not even talking about what they're really looking for, which is CSAM, child sex exploitation material, because that's what they're really looking for. I'm talking about, information that, a client cheated on his taxes and he sent a text message to his wife. Oh, by the way, we're getting a $50,000 tax refund. Whoa, now I have evidence of a crime. Now I have probable cause. Now I'm going to arrest you for tax evasion. I mean, crazy things like that. You're looking at my personal messages to my wife.
Well, aren't those papers? Aren't those papers that we're supposed to be securing? No, I love this thing with the phones, because this is something that I've been telling my audience about this for years. Stop with the thumbprints and the facial recognition and all that stuff. With all of these things, with your phones, with your laptops, all this stuff. That's why they don't have the thumbprint recognition stuff on laptops anymore. That was such a passing phase, because it's so easy to defeat. It's very, very easy to defeat, especially in these days of high-resolution images. It was years ago that you could take a picture of somebody's thumb and use it to access their print, whatever print access protections they have. And now it's already been ruled. It just hasn't been that long ago, but the courts have already looked at this idea and suggested that, well, obviously we can't extract a password from your head. So if you have a password on your phone or your computer or whatever it is, we can't get into it unless we try to brute force break into it, have somebody break into it from the outside. We can't force you to open it for us. But with these thumbprints and these facial recognition things, it's already been decided that because they don't have to invasively sort of open you up to get the information, they can hold your phone up to your face without your permission and access your phone.
That's correct. And that is being done at our borders every single day. And what I'm also finding is, again, it's called the border search exception. It's supposed to take place at a border. Right. But what happens is the phone then gets confiscated and it's sent to a lab. The lab could be in the middle of Wisconsin. No border around Wisconsin, right? No borders there. And that lab now is doing a full test on everything that's been on that phone. Every text message, every picture, every email, every bank statement, everything is on that phone. But wait, you went out at the border and you don't have a search warrant. How did that happen? Well, we took the phone from the border, therefore we could do it, Crazy stuff.
Well, isn't that the slippery slope, right? I mean, well, I'll ask you. I've made this assumption all of my life, and I've had other people confirm the general concept of it. There's this thing called the Bill of Rights. It's an addendum to the Constitution. They're obviously two very clearly different documents with two clearly different purposes. One is the organization and methodology for running the federal system. The other is a protection of natural rights that already exist. And so there's a certain language that was used at the time that it was created. There's one word in particular that's used throughout the Bill of Rights, and it's the people. And it's people. It's not citizens, it's not Americans, it's not black people, it's not white people, it's not men, it's not women, it's not gays, it's not straights. There's no caveat whatsoever to the word people. It is the people. And so it's all people, because we know that they knew what citizens were, they knew what Americans were, they knew what these things were. So the protections that are offered us, they are offered to the people. And that means all people under what America claims is its jurisdiction. So anyone entering America's jurisdiction has protected free speech, has a Second Amendment protected right, because they are people, and those protections protect them from recrimination ultimately by the state and through state manipulations, whether it's from another individual or it's from another state or whether it's from the legal system itself or whatever it is. Theoretically, and my continued basis to make that argument would be the very next amendment to the Constitution uses the word citizen. It doesn't use the word people. People have lost their standing in the eyes of government by the time we get to that very next amendment.
Right. It definitely makes a differentiation between people and citizens. And, and people rights, it's every single person. It's if you have a heartbeat and you're walking on 2 feet, you're a person, you have that right. You have that right to privacy. And then we have exceptions to that right. Oh, by the way, but, at the border, you don't have the exception. If you're on a certain watch list, you don't have that exception. You're not a person anymore all of a sudden, or you're an exception to it. But yes, then obviously there's, the citizens. Well, I pay my taxes. I'm a citizen. I'm supposed to be law abiding. Therefore, I could carry a gun. Therefore, I could have the following rights. I could have certain, freedoms in terms of free speech. But as a person, I could not be searched unless some exception. It's crazy rulings. And it, again, it's towards anarchy, just like your podcast is.
Yeah, I wish that there was I wish it wasn't as simple as that, because you can look at it, it's in the language, and so you get people that want to argue the language, and I guess that's what the law is about, right? It's about arguing the language and the differences in the the way one person interprets a contract or something like that, or an agreement between people or whatever it is. It's sort of about interpreting language. And you use the word person there, and person has a very specific language. It's a very specific word, and it actually, a lot of people argue that a person is like a person with title, that it's somebody important, that's what that is. But actually, if you go back and you look at the word person, a person encompasses everything about an individual. It's everything you are. It's your job as a whatever you do for work. It's your position and title in life. It's you as a father. It's you as a son or a daughter or whatever it is. It's all of your person, everything about you that you identify yourself as through your job or whatever it is, family life. Whereas people are just people. Everybody is a people. We're all just people. And citizens are people who have been given the privileges of the state because they've agreed to participate in the state process. And so the argument that all of us have the right to vote actually isn't true. It's not a people's protected right. The right to vote is actually a citizen's right. It only belongs to it's only a right that belongs to people who have been given permission to do it, and that assumes that they can take that permission away too.
And more so, it's not just permission, it's permission. And then I need you to register. I need to know who you are. I need to know what your signature is. I need to know what your picture looks like. I need to know where you live. All right. And then you have the right to vote. And because it's only a right, we can remove that right anytime we want. So if you've committed a felony, bam, we're removing that right. You can no longer participate in elections. You don't get to decide who the next governor is, the next mayor is, the next president is. You know, it's just removed totally from you because you made one mistake.
They claimed you made a mistake. When we're talking about words, I love this because I think it's extremely important when you're talking about something like this, when somebody making a claim against you or a claim against your property, that things be very specific, not general. So a crime in very specific terms is a felonious violation of another person and their property. Whereas the state makes this assumption that a crime is anything it says is wrong, period. And not a very specific, like having a victim and a victim being able to show that they're damaged and being able to prove the valuation of those damages in a court and having a court side with them and say, yes, that's right. This person over here violated you and your property. Here's how much that was worth. They owe you.
It's a crazy system because they define crime as anything they want to define it as, and all in the name of safety. It's all safety. Listen, we will define a new crime in the words of safety. You know, one of the craziest things I've come across is, you know, I do a lot of sex crimes work, you know, and there's a lot of crimes against children. It's very unfortunate, but I have the stomach to defend these people, and I do a very good job of it. But, you know, it's interesting because, you know, if someone was to have consensual, quote unquote, sex with a 16-year-old, they'd go to jail. Okay, that's the bottom line. However, in some states, you can marry a 16-year-old. So the same state has a law that says it's a crime. Oh, but by the way, if you're married, it's all of a sudden not a crime.
It's not a crime. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wasn't that how Jerry Lee Lewis got away with it?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. But if you think about it logically, it makes no sense. You have two laws. One is makes it a crime. And one is, oh, just marry the person. It's no longer a crime. Make up your minds.
Yeah. And there was supposed to be some sort of consistency between states, right? And the laws and the things. That was the whole point of this, the Bill of Rights, right? Is
right.
That no matter what, that when you went from one state to another, regardless of the various sort of political and social laws that don't necessarily infringe upon your rights, that your rights are protected when you go from one state to another. And we had this Supreme Court system supposedly that its only job was to adjudicate cases between states, between people in states, and between people in other states. And
right.
that was it. That was their three mandates. That's exactly what they're
the
supposed to do. And that stuff is out the window.
Right. And you know, if I have a poker game in my basement, I'm breaking the law. If I'm in Nevada having a poker game in my basement, I'm a hero. Yeah, and that's the disparaging part. Or if I'm on an Indian reservation having a poker game, I'm not just a hero. I'm a hero towards hundreds of people who are Indians as well. I mean, it's like we don't know how to make laws consistent throughout.
And I guess it's because we can't, right? Because it isn't the point of our system supposed to be that all cases are adjudicated on their merits, on the actual claims and the proof of claims, and that everything else was the point of setting up the system was so that we don't deal with those things. That when somebody comes and says, I have a claim against this person, I claim that they violated me for whatever it is, and you take it to the police officer, and I want you to arrest him because if you don't arrest him now, there's evidence of this crime that's going to disappear. You guys need to go and seize it. And the cop takes that to the judge, and the judge says, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's clear that there's something going on here. We better take a look. Let's get involved. It seems like a really simple and straightforward process, and it's the only thing the only conclusion that I can come to is that the reason that it doesn't work is because there's almost no benefit for the system itself in just adjudicating the cases of the real disputes between people, and because it's expected to be the judicial system and not a system of arbitration of complaints.
That's so true. And there's another aspect to this that everyone is missing. And that's, you say you take it to the judge. There are thousands of judges. Which judge do I take it to? Because every judge rules differently, and every judge has a different lifestyle, and every judge thinks about things differently. So the same case in front of a different judge has a totally different outcome. Yeah. And by the way, judges are human. They woke up that morning, maybe they had a fight with their wife, maybe the dog bit them. I don't know what happened before they came into the courtroom, and they might be predisposed to being in a very angry, bad mood, and they're going to take it out on my client. Yeah. And whereas another judge is in a great mood and would say, okay, yeah, no problem. There's no probable cause. There's no, we're gonna say there's no valid search, whatever it is. They're human. And the problem with the system is when you're dealing with humans and you're dealing with all these different types of emotions and all these different types of people, you're going to get different results. And it's just not fair. Some people come to me and they say, okay, I've been accused of this, that, and the other thing. What do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I can't tell you until I know who the judge is. They're like, what do you mean you can't tell me? I said, every judge is going to rule differently in this courthouse. I said, there are 3 judges who will be on our side. There's 4 judges who won't be on our side. Let's find out who the judge is, and I'll have a better idea of giving you a better educated guess, because that's all it's going to be is an educated guess. And everyone comes to me on their first day and says, what's going to happen to me? I should predict the future. I can't, because I don't even know who the judge is going to be.
Yeah. Until you know that, that's one of the big things in a case. I mean, you're lucky you know the jurisdiction. Yeah. Because the jurisdiction changes from one place to another, and you get people arguing over jurisdiction. And that used to be a thing. That used to be a much bigger thing than it seems to be now. It used to be something that a judge would have to address immediately, is whether or not he had actual jurisdiction, whether he was a valid arbiter of the complaint in this case. And that seems to get overlooked a lot now. And just the Fourth Amendment, due process in general is just gone. There is no such thing anymore. There really isn't. It's all about you're considered guilty right away, no matter what. As soon as you're in the system, and it's worse in some places than it is in other places, where depending on what types of bonds are available, whether they're through the state, whether they're private bonds, there's all these mathematical equations that exist that put you in a particular place. Having been through the system in different places, different states, but seeing their sort of general weird the things that they do. They have these matrices, and if you're on this level here and you're in this space here, you're guaranteed that if they find you guilty, you're going to spend this much time in jail or this, and it's just all laid out, and that just totally, for me, from the bond process up through the prosecution and the actual time that you will spend in jail, it's for your crime, is not based on your crime. Right. It's based on some computer algorithm somewhere, and they gamble on your bond and try to make money off of you and hope that, and they tie you up in the system and they make you take UAs when there's no drugs involved in the court case, and it's just all about generating money.
It's all about money. It's all about money, especially the UAs. The lab wants everyone to take one, so the lab can make lots of money. No question about it.
Yeah.
It's a real messed up system, especially you mentioned bond and bail, and it's just it's such a scary thing what's going on. They want to have a bail reform act to do away with cashless bail, which is a great idea, except it still doesn't work. People who have without money are in jail, even though they're presumed innocent. That's not fair. I don't have a house to put up as my bond. I'm a homeless guy, but I didn't do the crime. Why am I suffering in jail? And then what happens is, I spent 3 months or 4 months in jail suffering, even for a crime I didn't do. And the attorney says, by the way, if you plead guilty now, you'll get out because it's time served. You already did all the time. And it's such a dilemma. And I feel so bad for the people who tell me, but I didn't do the crime, but I do want to get out of jail and I don't have money for bail. So I'll just lie and say I did it. because it's so important for me to get out of, Rikers Island, so to speak, whatever it is. And it's sad. It's sad that if you're wealthy, you get more and better justice. It's very sad. I hate seeing it. I always try to mentor, the legal aid attorneys and the other attorneys who are just working for the general public, giving them better ideas how to do things, because I want to see justice for all. And all means whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're white, whether you're black. It doesn't matter. It's justice for all, everyone.
Yeah, it was supposed to be that way, wasn't it? And the system was supposed to be such that money didn't matter, that money wasn't the deciding factor in things, that the truth was, that the facts of what you made a claim about, and the evidence that's right there, and that's what decided things. And it's just not that way anymore. It's about expedience, and it's about process. It's about it's about keeping you in the system. Let's start with that. It's about, right. If it takes you a year to go to trial, that's 365 days of potential violations of you just screwing up something, failing to use a turn signal or whatever it is, and ending up back in the system, and they get to keep piling on, and it is disgusting. I can't imagine watching it from your point of view and not really being able to do. So many times I've wanted to look at a judge and say, when you went to law school and you got into this and you thought, man, I'm gonna help people, it's gonna be all about justice. What did you think when you woke up one day and realized that you're just a revenue generator for the state?
Right. I'll tell you, sometimes in the back of my mind, I just want to sarcastically say to the judge, why don't we just take him in the back and shoot him? Because we'll get this over right away. It's one bullet. It's like a $4 bullet. Shoot him in the head, and that's it. We'll finish the whole thing. Because I'm so angry with what's going on with this judge. And I'm like, you have no idea. You can't judge him for the 10 minutes that you've seen him and the 20 pages of documents that you've read. It's impossible.
That he barely read.
We're lucky if he read it, right? Yeah. I've spent hours and hours and hours with him. With his wife, with his children. I know him better than most people know him. And you're going to tell me in 20 minutes that he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail? No, not fair.
Yeah, it doesn't seem quite right. The whole process is so broken. You have no standing, for one, as an individual. You have no standing in the courts anymore. It is assumed that if you're brought into court, you must have an attorney, not just counsel, not that you can be your own representation. You're ignored by the judge. I remember looking at one that they're trying to convict me of firearms violation ultimately. And it's something about 100,000 people every year are convicted of defending themselves without firing a shot at some scumbag who tried to attack them. And I just remember the first appearance going in there by myself, and my silly little way that I am, and just looking at the judge saying, "Yeah, I'm ready to watch a jury right now of Kansans who support the Second Amendment and the right of self-defense," and he wasn't going to have none of that, we will have this. We'll have this trial wrapped up by 5:00 this afternoon. Let's get the jury in here and let's ask them. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it. Especially you bring that up, the guns, because oh God, yes.
My office is maybe a 15-minute drive from JFK Airport, right? Maybe a 25-minute drive from LaGuardia Airport. Both airports are in New York City, and New York City has very strict gun laws. There's no open carry. There's no carry. That's it. Just law enforcement only basically could carry.
Right.
So many people go to the airport with licensed firearms, but licensed in other states, and get arrested.
I hear about that a lot, including politicians.
And housewives, and politicians, yes. And it's a very sad thing because, in Queens, where JFK Airport is and where LaGuardia Airport is, they indict every single gun case. You're going to have a felony on your record. We might not have to put you in jail. You might pay a big fine, but you're going to have a felony on your record. That's going to follow you the rest of your life. Why? Because you came from Florida, which you're allowed to have open carry in Florida, and you forgot that the gun was in your bag, and you're going through TSA metal detector, and some TSA guy now has the power to stop you and have you arrested. And by the way, even if I get you no jail time, which I will usually get if you don't have a record, okay, and unfortunately you might have a felony on your record, there's a civil penalty. There's a civil penalty that TSA puts on you for like almost $10,000 because you had to disturb somebody because they had to write a report about you having a gun. It's the craziest thing. And again, it's all about the money. Even if your case is dismissed, if I got the case dismissed, there's still the civil penalty.
Man, I didn't realize it was that bad, or that they even had a sort of power like that they can levy charges against you. That seems broken.
You're very broken for a licensed firearm in another state.
Yeah,
very broken. And besides the headache of, you missed your flight, you might have to spend the day in jail, and then eventually you get out. Now you got to rebook for another flight. You probably lost your money on the first flight. It's, there's so many consequences to that action that it's a horrible, horrible existence. And hopefully a judge will say, we trust that you'll come back, even though we know you live in another state. Otherwise, you get no bail.
Yeah, right. You're going to lock you up.
They're going to lock you up.
Yeah. And that's assuming that the AI scanning system didn't mistake a bag of Doritos for a pistol.
Right. I saw that story.
You saw that, yeah.
I saw that. I feel so bad for that kid.
Yeah. Crazy.
Get down on the floor because you're eating Doritos.
Yeah. Wild. What happened to doing the work? Isn't that what law enforcement was about?
Yes.
That's what you wanted to do, right? You wanted to be a detective. You wanted to solve crimes and bring justice to people who've actually been violated. And you look at, and you go and you find the evidence and you hunt down the criminal. You don't sit around eating 12 donuts and sipping coffee in the bank parking lot hoping that you stumble back asswards into some criminal who happens to drive a little too fast down the road,
Right.
Man.
Right. The police resources are so strained that they actually use AI now to determine what neighborhoods they should patrol.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
the supposedly safe neighborhoods have no police officers anywhere.
Right.
So
and there never was. Come on, let's be honest. If you're paying attention, the west side of town, the cops aren't hanging out on the west side of town. They're hanging out on the east side of town.
Right. So, but everyone should be patrolled. That's the bottom line, and they're not. They're just totally ignored.
Well, if you're going to do one, you have to do the other, right?
Yes,
yeah.
100%.
Just to make it fair. But okay, let's look at our design, the design of our cities. Okay, obviously the nation is settled east to west, so there's going to be that. It's just the natural progression. The oldest things are east, and moving west is newer, and that's in every single city, basically. But if you look at those, if you take a look at them, you see in the city, in the space where most of the people are most of the time, all of the traffic is controlled. And there are all these things that you can do to violate the public peace or whatever by violating one of these traffic ordinances. But as you move out further, even in newer cities in the east now, as you build new developments east, that some cities have that ability. It's a weird thing that they don't, but it's just the nature of the way the place is settled. But the western side of town, they get all the new development in street and traffic controls. I know that if you drive from where I'm at here, where you're lucky if the best thing you have is streets with no stop signs and no traffic controls, so you just are watching and driving, and there's no accidents ever. To the worst, which is just completely stop signs and stoplights everywhere. But the further you go west, it's roundabouts. It's not traffic controls. Right. It's keep traffic flowing. It's don't give opportunities for the stop and go. It's don't, and there's no cops. There are no cops patrolling out there. There's why? Yeah,
it's so interesting. You bring up traffic. I've always thought about this. There's a law in New York City you have to wear a seatbelt. I think in New York State, actually, you have to wear a seatbelt. And it's such an easy ticket for the cops to give to generate huge ransom revenue. I saw you didn't have a seatbelt.
Yep.
That's it, done. And why? Oh, for safety reasons. 1 second.
If I'm not wearing what you started the conversation with. If
I'm not wearing a seatbelt, I get in a car accident, I'm going to hurt myself. But that was my choice. I sat down, I decided not to wear it. How come there's no law that says I have to take my heart medication in the morning? Right? Why don't you criminalize the fact that I missed my medication this morning? It's my safety. Everyone's medication, you miss your dose, you be criminalized. But yet, if I don't want to take my heart medication and one of my blood pressure medication, whatever it is, my diabetes medication, I have that choice not to take it. Why don't I have a choice not to wear my seatbelt? Because it's so easy for them to make money that way. Yeah. And that's all about the money. Okay, we see you're not wearing a seatbelt. Bam, $50 ticket. You're lucky if it's only $50. It's more like $150 in New York City.
$100, $80. Yeah.
So it's interesting because that's the only reason to have a seatbelt. It's not about safety. They don't care about my safety.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's become an institutionalized thing, right? So once you make it criminalized, you have insurance. There's an insurance against it, and so there's this whole money-making scheme there, and you have the insurance companies you sort of lobbying for things like that, because ultimately our socialist system where all of us end up paying for everybody else's mistakes, but they got to protect themselves somehow.
Definitely.
Yeah, they obviously they serve a purpose. That's another one of these problems that we have. There's in our system is the manipulation of markets like that for insurance in particular. Why can't I buy insurance from any place in America that I want to? But I can't. I have to buy insurance from certain places, sometimes from only within my own state. I can't be insured by a company out of state. And even if it is an out-of-state company, they have to have a local presence and even a local business, a whole other business set up that's a Kansas business for them to be able to conduct any business in this state. When I could just pick up a phone or, these days they're computers, I guess those things work, and you can go on websites and sign up for it. Why? Money.
So it's all about money. It's all about money generated by the state, by the government, and by the insurance industry itself.
Yeah.
Because, if I really wanted the top insurance in the world, there's a company called Lloyd's of London. They're not a US based company. They can insure anything. Yep. They can insure a singer's voice, whatever you want insured. Lloyd's of London will insure it. They'll figure out how to insure it.
They'll give you a price, and you'll either pay it or not. Yeah.
But as a New Yorker, I can only buy from a certain amount of companies that are in the state and not out of the. And what if I want to save money? And I found, wow, there's an Asian insurance company. It's a valid company. I chose to use them. Why not? I can't. I can't
it's
say
for your own good, though, because what if they default? What if they don't pay your bill? Just like any other possible insurance company could. Look at what we're going through with the fires there in California here, these most recent state of fires, and insurance companies talking about, we ain't paying you. How the hell are we going to pay you? We can't. We're broke. Billions of dollars worth of property burned down, and we insured it all, and we don't have any money. Right. We're playing we're playing a money shuffling game just like everybody else.
Thanks for paying your premiums on time. It was well spent on our executives, but we can't pay you back.
But we can't pay you.
Yeah.
We will gladly pay you Tuesday for a check today.
Right.
Yeah, right. And what are you going to do about it? Because that's what happens, right? Because we're talking about a cyclical problem. We're talking about a thing that feeds on itself and never ends. That it doesn't matter. This is the crux of the whole problem here, right? It doesn't matter who we put in as president. It doesn't matter who the judges are. It doesn't matter who the lawyers are, the DAs. None of it matters because it's about the system. The system is at this point defending itself regardless. And that's the problem with systems, right?
Yes.
They become more important. That's what everybody's running around screaming about right now. Democracy is at stake. Really? Democracy isn't so great if democracy is what got us here. Democracy either didn't prevent what's happening now or it allowed it to happen. So it can't be that great in the first place. Maybe democracy is not the thing we should be worried about.
Right. It could be the best option right now, but it could definitely be a hell of a lot better.
Right, exactly. And people are so well. That's why we have this underlying, and this is something that I've talked about for a long time, and I think psychologists are on this. And I just saw an article, LA Times or something, somebody big, important, somebody like that, talking about it here just recently. And this is underlying this low level. You're from New York. You know this analogy. Ghostbusters 2, the slime going underneath the city that is just growing and building up because of the rage of the New Yorkers and the anger, all of that tri-state area anger and everything that's going on in New York and the up yours, buddy, and that sort of thing. And it's raging and bubbling up. But it's an interesting analogy. And something interesting that they looked at and thought about and saw years ago, but you're seeing it now. You're seeing it happen now. We just had the FBI come out with some of their statistics, and they're talking about how there's couple thousand more justified shootings. Since from 2019 to 2024 or whatever the latest statistics were, that there's a huge percent, like 59% or something like that, increase in some of the larger cities and places where it's legal, stand your ground, that sort of thing. Obviously, what I was looking at was something that was ultimately anti-gun. That was what they were getting at. They weren't looking at all of the numbers and all of the other things that happen to gun owners and all of the people every single year, upwards of 2 million people a year or something, that defend themselves without firing a shot, using a firearm, that sort of thing. They don't talk about any of that. It's just a sided view. It's just the same thing. It's about it. And I figure where it comes from is this low-lying, underlying fear and anger and everything that's building up, and it's a frustration that we can't get away from it all because it's everywhere. It's everywhere we turn, we're being taxed, we're being robbed, we're being it's being given to this group, it's being taken for that group. It's empowering that nation over there, and our people are going hungry, and there's nothing any of us can do about it, and so it's just sort of bubbling and seething, and it's coming out. It's coming out now. We're in a very dangerous period, I think.
I throw away all the statistics when it comes to, gun use, gun control, gun ownership, because the one major statistics that we don't have is how many people didn't start up with Michael Storm because he carries? How many people didn't go into a synagogue because they know that the congregants in there are armed? We don't have those statistics.
Yeah, we never will.
Right, how it's protecting people. So don't tell me how many people were accidentally shot, and don't tell me how many people were were shot in self-defense, and don't tell me how many people were shot as a violent crime until you could tell me how many shootings and how many robberies and how many rapes were avoided because somebody was carrying or they knew somebody.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that you put it that way, because that makes perfect sense. Because if I know I have this one article in particular because I'm sharing it in the first hour. We're talking in the second hour. I'm going to be sharing it in the first hour, so the audience will have already heard some of this. But so this is the title. This is Wall Street Journal. 6 words every killer should know. I feared for my life, officer. And the first thing I see when I see that is, why is the word officer in there? Every killer, every person who's trying to violate somebody, rob somebody, hurt somebody, should fear for their life from the person that they intend to harm. And if we had empowered individuals, and we do in lots of places, and that's why we'll never have those statistics of how many people defend themselves without having to defend themselves.
Yeah. Right. I just saw a gunpoint robbery video on the same block where my daughter lives in California. When I saw it, I immediately sent to her. I said, be careful. Don't wear your jewelry outside. This is what's going on in your block. But it was 4 masked men coming out of a Toyota Camry, each with a gun. Take the guy's wallet, take the guy's Rolex, take the guy's jewelry. Get in the car, drive away. It was captured on a Ring camera, right? Mm. Now, had that guy been carrying, come on. Either it wouldn't have happened because they may have seen it, and if it was an open carry, or he would just draw it on them.
Maybe he has a chance to defend himself. That's the thing we don't know. We don't know. We can't speculate about that stuff. That's why we're supposed to have we're supposed to be empowered, and we're supposed to have the right of self-defense. I don't even like to talk about the Second Amendment. I don't care about the Second Amendment. I don't need permission from the state. I don't need the state to recognize that I have the right of self-defense, period, regardless. And it's anything that I perceived as a threat. And I have to reiterate to people over and over again when I use the word perceived that it doesn't mean imagined, that it means realized, that a threat exists. And it's my decision to make in defense of myself.
Right. I wish we had statistics from the Old West. What was it like back then when everyone carried?
Well, I think we know, right? Because if we look back at history a little bit, obviously we don't know, but we have this very general sense of it because everybody thinks that it was just gunfight after gunfight walking down the streets. And that's absolutely not the case. It was the opposite of that. There was a handful of gunfights, and those were the things that made the movies and the dime store rags that they printed, the pulp paper rags that they printed about Billy the Kid and stuff like that. There was a handful of these incidences across the Old West. Why? Because everybody was armed, and you didn't go around screwing with other people. And you notice that in the biggest one, when you're talking about Tombstone and that whole thing that happened, those people were disarmed. That's why it happened.
Right. Good point. Point. People didn't have to lock their doors when they went into their house because they had a gun. You don't need to lock your door. Who's going to come into my house? Right. They all know I'm armed. Yeah.
And people were just empowered. They were stronger back then. They knew that nobody was coming to their rescue. And people seem to believe that somebody's going to come to their rescue today, that it can't happen here. All of these weird things, right? There's all these things throughout history that we've seen that happen over and over again daily, not just, cyclically, through nation states or something like that, but just sort of daily, historically, with people interacting with each other and the very natural dangers of it all. And we were just so much stronger people, and it's because of socialism. If you want to talk about political ideologies and destructive things, you're talking about us having to support the state. That's the real socialism, is that the people having to fund the state, which then in turn sets up arbitrary conditions under which we're supposed to live and gives itself permission to rob us.
Right. What another sad thing that I always see, and it's a terrible thing, is that when there is a justified police shooting, the investigation that they go through, these police officers, right? It's not like I feared for my life, officer, and the officer says, okay, we're not making an arrest. Everything is investigated from the beginning when he put his bullet in his gun until the person was shot, right? So hopefully he gets cleared, he doesn't get indicted. But unfortunately, there are cases here where we're indicting police officers on what I would say is a justified shooting, right? Sure. But let's say he gets cleared. You know what happens next? There's a civil lawsuit. The person that was shot, who's a bad guy, there's no question about it. He might even be a convicted felon at this point. Gets a, you know what? You shouldn't have shot me. You should have figured out another way to disarm me or to put me down or to arrest me. But you shot me, and therefore I'm injured. I'm suing you. And the city of New York pays millions of dollars. I bet. What are you paying these guys millions of dollars for? That's where my tax money is going, to this criminal who was shot justifiably by a police officer. He was investigating.
And people think it's a joke. People think it's anecdotal because you watch the TV. I remember this sort of episode of Married with Children from like '89 or something like that, where a criminal breaks into their house and Al knocks him the hell out. And everybody's cheering him. All the normal people are cheering him, but the courts are prosecuting him. Because he broke his hand on this guy's face. I said, well, if I'm going down for $500,000, let's make it a full mill, and it clocks him there in the court again. But it's all anecdotal, right? It's supposed to be funny, ha ha ha. The courts are supposed to defend us. They're supposed to take care of us. But the truth is that they're just not. Let's start with the very notion that the police don't even show up until 9 to 13 minutes after a phone call has come in. How is it that they're supposed to get there and solve problems between people when they aren't there? They come in and they're hopped up, and it's respect my authority. You will obey me. And if you don't listen, they're smacking you around and arresting you and throwing you on the ground, and nobody's done anything, and they're shooting your dog, and it's just escalation after escalation. And it's who the hell wants to call a cop? I will call a crackhead because he's not going to try to rob me. He's going to ask me for some change, and you got a hit, bro.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's very exciting stuff.
So what's the future then? We got about 6 minutes or so. Tell me about the future of the law, and tell me what you do a little bit there in helping out your clients and how you are an advocate there.
Sure. Well, a client comes to me. We hopefully have a long discussion about everything in his life, not just about the case. I need to know every aspect of his life. I want to feel like we are friends. I want him to feel comfortable enough to say, you know what, you can come over to dinner tonight after he leaves my office. And once you have a relationship like that with a client, it's much easier to defend a client like that. And then depending on the case, depending on where we're going with this case, some cases are slam dunk for the government, and the best thing to do is to plead the case out and get the least amount of time. Some case I want to fight like hell because I have an innocent client. I know in my gut when I have an innocent client, and I'm angry at the law officer that arrested him. I'm angry at the prosecutor that's bringing this case. I take it personally sometimes, and I shouldn't, but I do. I'm going to fight, and I'm losing sleep on those cases. The future of the case, the future of the justice system, we need better trained judges. There's no question about that. We need better trained law enforcement officers, and we need prosecutors who understand that their job is to do justice, not get convictions. That's so important. When I was in the DA's office, we had something called the trial bell. When you came back from trial and you won, they would ring a bell so everyone would hear it, and everyone wants that. No, let's not do that. Let's have the justice bell. So even if you lose the trial, but you lost it the right way because justice was served, ring the bell, But of course, they're not going to do that. They're going to, incentivize wins because it was all about the wins. How many convictions did you get in the 3 years you were here? Yeah. Not how much justice did you serve in the 3 years you were here. I had one case. It wasn't my case, and I read the indictment and I said, "This is wrong. We have to fix this. This guy has been in jail for a long time, and the indictment has mistakes in it. We can't continue this case until we fix this." And other prosecutors are like, just keep your mouth shut. I'm like, no, absolutely not. That's not my job. Is to do justice, And it's the same thing on the defense side. My job is to do justice. I don't care what the crime you're accused of is. I don't care whether you did it or not. I want to see that the Constitution is upheld, that everything was done the right way. All right. And if it wasn't done the right way, I'm going to bring it to the light. And I'm going to show the court that it was not done the right way. And because it was not done the right way, you got to let him go. I know in your heart you don't want to. I know everyone in this room doesn't want to. But if we don't let him go, then we'll have 10 innocent people in jail. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you get what we have here now, where there's so many people in jail who really aren't guilty of anything. They're guilty of violating political and social opinions.
They're guilty sometimes of not having a good lawyer or having a lawyer that's ignoring their case.
Yeah.
And that's very sad,
I've been so lucky. I tell you, the couple of things that I've come up against over the years that, years ago it was so much different. I remember, sort of being 16, 17 years old and being surrounded by cops at gunpoint and showing up at court sometime later by myself without a lawyer after having missed the court date earlier in that day, just bringing myself into the courtroom to throw myself on the mercy of the court, not realizing I'd missed the court date, and the judge going, "Hey, you know what? You showed up. You're here. You made the effort. It's all good. Let's deal with this, and let's get it taken care of." And it was like that, one-on-one. It was handled. Right. It was done, and it was serious charges, and it was handled. It was handled. Yes. Nothing, there's no felony. Well, okay, so maybe it didn't get quite as handled because I did have to chase, sort of 20 years of FBI documents and things like that to get some things changed for the adjudication, for the actual outcome of everything. But yeah, in the end, I did that, all by myself. There was no trial. There's no lawyers involved or anything. It was just me talking to the judge and him looking at the claim. And going sort of years later back into the system and seeing how it's so much about the time. It's about following this process. No, it's month. You're going to be doing this for 7 months minimum. That's if we don't get any delays. That's if we don't have any, requests to hold things over or anything like that. It's a minimum 7 months that you're going to be wrapped up. You're going to be taking UAs. You got to report to some kind of probation officer or something like that. You're paying all of this money out for the UAs and for the probation system, and you're guilty before anybody has ever even looked at the charges.
Yeah, certainly your privacy is totally invaded, between the UAs and the probation visits. You get a knock on the door 8 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing here? Oh, it's a probation visit. Come on, let me get in. Let me come in. He says, I'm still in my pajamas. Doesn't matter. I get to come in. You have no more rights as a private citizen.
Unbelievable.
Because you were arrested. You're not guilty yet, but you were arrested.
It's crazy that we're talking about this here in America, where it's just supposed to be so much better and so much different, but it's nothing new. No. You and I having this conversation, we're late to the party. This has been going on so long.
That's right.
So we are out of time. Saul Bienenfeld, Bienenfeldlaw.com and towardanarchy.com for all the other information and links for Saul. Thank you so much for joining
Michael, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, my friend, and we'll see all the rest of you next week.
Thank you so much.
Why is there such a big fence, Dad?
Well, millions of people come to America in search of a better life, and we've decided we don't need that many.
Did the super nuisance phones come through the fence?
No, Bobby. Con applied the legal way. Sometimes the system fails us.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network.